Maybe. And Eric could go live.
Have you ever wondered what was out there in the night sky? Stared up at the stars in the hopes of seeing something out of the ordinary? Have you heard unexplainable noises coming from a vacant room, or watched a shadow cross the wall in front of you? Have you asked yourself if there is life after this one, or if you had life before? What about strange creatures that are mythical and elusive? Have you experienced deja vu or felt a prompting to leave because you felt you were in danger? If you have, you were on the fringe.
Welcome to What If Tomorrow on the Fringe. I'm Mark.
I'm Pam.
And I'm Jess.
And tonight we are going to cover a couple subjects real briefly before we get into the meat and potatoes of RH Negative blood. We're going to talk about our recent trip to Geneseo, Kansas to UFO Day. But before that, I've got a little housekeeping and listen to these ads, please. Hey, this is Mark with What If Tomorrow and What If Tomorrow on the Fringe. Be sure to check out our website, whatiftomorrowmedia.com, and look at our cool merch. We've got t-shirts, hoodies, posters, and more. Our affiliates are Duke Cannon, EMP Shield, My Patriot Supply, and Conflicted the Game. Or check out buymeacoffee.com/whatiftomorrow and buy us a coffee. And as always, be sure to like, comment, and share on both Facebook and YouTube. It helps get our content out to others and help our channel grow. Now on with the show. And we're back. And we just got back from spending a weekend on the road, going to Geneseo, Kansas, UFO capital of Kansas, for their third annual UFO Day. So those of you who got to see us out there, nice seeing you again. And it was a fun weekend.
It was.
Great. Yep. And we came home with some merch. So I got my t-shirt.
Instead of buying merch, I put all of mine into the donation queue. So
yay.
I can buy more merch.
And I got inspired, guys. So I have a surprise. I got super inspired because everybody that comes likes to dress up and they do a big parade, and there was just fun stuff everywhere. So I made me a hat.
Oh, that's perfect.
That is nice.
You like it? I can't wear it with my headphones.
You look like my favorite Martian.
Yeah. You like it?
Yep, I like it.
I like it.
Yep.
It's a little Shrek-like, I think, but
it is a little.
Isn't it?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep pushing it down. Do you know there's directions how to make these online?
That's awesome.
Yeah, because I was like, how do I make, besides just smushing it onto your head until there's something there? I was like, how do I do it? And they were like, all right, get a ruler and get a bowl and all this other stuff. And I was like, wow, that's like in depth.
And if you want to save yourself the trouble of making your own tinfoil hat, you can actually go on Amazon and buy an RF protected ball cap to protect you from the power lines and the aliens and the mind readers.
Interesting.
They are an actual product, and they look normal even if they're not. Mostly it's like to protect from cell phone radiation and whatnot. But
yeah, I will say this. So it was beautiful that day.
It was the best day so far in this month.
Yeah, we got so lucky. We thought we were going to melt. But I will say there was a lot of people walking around with these that day. And I'm inside my house at 72 degrees and my head is already frying right now.
Oh, yeah. They hold the heat in.
How they have any brains left, I think they probably cooked themselves wearing these.
That's wild.
But they did look smashing.
They
They
did.
did.
It
They
was
did.
very,
Very
cool.
stylish.
So
Although
I
they
think-
didn't have the cool Shrek
Yeah, that's
antenna
right.
that
that's
you
true.
did.
They had little pointy heads that looked like Hershey's Kisses.
They did.
They just needed the
Yeah, they
little
did.
flag out of them.
That's
Yes.
awesome.
But yeah, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, and you can go check out our first visit to the museum where we did a walk through the museum. The raw footage is up on the which YouTube channel did we put that up on? I think
SCK-BPS.
we put it up on the original SEK Bordertown Paranormal Society SEK BPS
Yep.
YouTube channel. Go check it out. They've got a lot of neat stuff. The doctor whose house the museum is was one of the early serious investigators of UFOs in Kansas, possibly the nation, and he had collected a great deal of information and interviews on tape from those early years. And if you're interested in 1950s and 60s UFO, what's the word I'm looking for? Holy cow! I lost Pam. Okay. If you're into the early UFO stuff,
Memorabilia or
memorabilia, culture. That's the word I'm looking
culture.
for.
There you go.
The early
Sorry, I had to
UFO
sneeze.
culture and research. Check it out. It's kind of cheesy by today's standards, but I mean, I
It's
think there's
cool
some.
cheesy though.
It is.
And
Cool
Enzo was
cheesy.
there with us. Enzo's in the
Yes.
chat.
Enzo is in the chat. Thanks for stopping. Thanks for going with us, Enzo. It was a good time.
It was. It
really
was so much
Yeah.
fun.
So, and hi,
Um,
Sylvain.
Yeah, Sylvain's in there. Hi, Sylvain.
But yeah, it was a really good trip. We met lots of really neat, interesting people. Margie K was there. There were several paranormal groups running around, and
mhm.
just lots of neat folks stopped by to talk to us while we were there.
There were. And what was great about it was they let us sit up close to the audience. So we got to do, it was really reminiscent of what we do during a Border Town Presents, where we
Or a
talk about a
podcast.
subject. Yes, where we
Yeah.
talk about a subject and the audience gets a chance to Q&A as we're talking. We don't make them wait till the end or anything. They can jump right in and ask
Yeah,
questions.
it's very informal. I
Mhm.
think it just makes for a better presentation because
It does.
they have input in what we're going to talk about. We just don't
Yep.
do a canned speech and just move on.
Right.
I don't know about you guys, but I think those canned speeches are just a little bit.
They'll make you glaze over if
Yeah,
you're not
they're
careful.
boring.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy giving them, and I don't think anybody really enjoys sitting through them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
No, it was
And a huge shout out to Scotty Rademacher from
Oh, yes.
Kansas Sightings and Red Dirt Cryptids. He showed up, drove his tush all the way from Arc City,
he did.
and watched our booth for us while we gave our talks. And came back for the second session to do that again.
He did.
He didn't have to do that, so
He
a
did
big
not,
shout out to
and
him.
Yeah.
we got some pictures with him. They're
We
up on
did.
our the Bordertown Facebook group.
Yep.
Check it out.
Mhm.
So
And we actually made cake news too. We weren't the ones being interviewed, but we're all over the background in different shots. So that
yeah,
was
and the
fun.
background and the background and the middle ground.
Yes, that's
Yep.
true.
You can always spot us because there's Enzo's fabulous shirt.
Oh,
Yep.
he had the best shirt. So did
It
Mark.
was very
They both had
colorful.
great
And
shirts.
Mark's was awesome too.
Yep.
Enzo said that Jim really liked how we were interactive with the crowd, and he seemed really pleased with the job that we did. So that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, it was
Rum
fun.
Nug.
If you get a chance to come next year, do it. Enzo says somehow Mark and I stood out. I can't imagine why.
No.
It's because you're so fabulous. You're the fashion icons.
Yes, absolutely.
No wonder twins.
Yeah.
We're about the same
Um,
age, I think. Enzo and I are about the same age, so yeah,
think so,
we
yeah.
could be
Yep.
twins and just not know it.
Very possible.
So
Yeah, so if you didn't get a chance to come this year, it is in the tiniest little town, but man, they do it big. And there was a good constant flow of people in and out all day. I think there was more there than what Jim Gray thought there was.
yeah, because I was watching, uh, I would see a group of 30 or 40 people, and then I would look up a little later, and there'd still be 30 or 40 people, but they'd be different folks. The
Yes.
people were coming and going all day long. I would
Mhm.
imagine probably if somebody had been counting individuals or had a sign up sheet there, I bet they had upwards of 250 separate individuals at one point during
That's
the day.
possible. That's
And there
very
were still
possible.
new people coming uh
Mhm.
As we were
as,
leaving.
as we were leaving,
Yes.
because there were festivities clear up till midnight. They had
Yes.
fireworks and they had a movie screening of The Day the Earth Stood Still. So
Yeah.
I
So
imagine
I was
they
just
had a
gonna
whole different
say,
group
so
tonight.
throughout the day, so they had a good a little amount of vendors there with all sorts of fun stuff you could get, and they had like a shaved ice truck, and they had a beer garden,
Yep.
and they had this one really great group. Man, they were fantastic. They just sat around in lawn chairs and chit chatted with people for hours. I don't know who they are, but they were pretty awesome,
They came from a
Good
long
and
ways
looking
away
too.
too.
they did. They were a little nutty,
I think
but
they do some kind of Paracon that's free every
huh.
September.
That sounds fantastic. We should find out all about that.
We
Yeah, yeah,
should.
we should look into that. Linda says they wonder how we are twins,
Oh,
and
yep.
that's true. I mean, well, it's kind of like the Danny DeVito, Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, The Twins. That's kind of how that goes.
That's hilarious.
One of us is short and ugly, and the other one's tall and handsome. I don't know which one of those is.
Boo.
So anyways, they also had kids games going on through the day, and they
Face
had a fun
painting.
parade.
Yep.
People showed up with decorated cars and bubble machines coming out of them and aliens popping out of the trunks. It
ET
was
was hanging out of
hilarious.
a passenger window in one of them.
Yep. And it will
Yeah,
be the
so
last or the first Saturday in July next year as well.
yeah.
Awesome.
So
So it's great fun, and it is a small place, and you'll probably get done with what you want to see of it after a couple of hours, unless you're staying for some specific talks or maybe staying for the movie late at night. But I will say it's not that far out of Hutchinson, Kansas, and if you're already out and about doing, like space type things, the Cosmosphere is right there. So grab your
Yes.
kids and go spend a whole weekend up in
Yeah.
that area there. You can go and do the Cosmosphere and the Aquatic Center and go see UFO Day, and it
yeah,
could
you
be
can
like
just
a
make a
whole
whole
Paris
weekend of
weekend
it.
of it
Caves are not very
easily.
far away either, because I know just during
Yeah.
lunch, Scotty and his niece, they ran over to Ferris Caves and
Yep.
hiked around that for a little bit, and then they came back, and they were back by the time we had our second talk
Yeah.
presentation.
Yep.
Yep.
And the town and the area, all the residents of the area just know how to do it right. At one point, Pam and I left to go grab lunch for everybody, because sadly their food truck
Broke
blew a
down.
tire or something, broke down and couldn't make it in. And we didn't want to go stand in line. They had some food being served at various places around town, but we just decided to go run out and get some fast food really quick. And the whole way out of town, every little farmhouse, every big farmhouse, they had little aliens. Even if it was just a little alien up in the window, they were supporting
Or a balloon
the
Yep.
or something.
day. So I thought it
It's
was
pretty
just really
cool.
fun that everybody supports it.
And so said, if you're in the area, save room for a meal in Lindsborg, Kansas. That's the truth. Bella's Soul Bistro. It's the best.
Yep.
Yeah.
I give it
Good stuff.
2 knives and a fork.
All right. Thanks, Stu.
So
Stewie just
all
jumped up.
right. Well, with that being said, you want to get into the RH negative blood theories.
Sure. Let's
for,
do it.
for those of you who aren't familiar, there are all kinds of crazy theories about RH negative blood. We'll start out with talking about blood types. There are 4 major blood groupings. There's A, there's B, and O or 0, as it's sometimes called, and AB. Add into that, in the 30s, they discovered the rhesus factor, which is only 7% of people worldwide, 15% of Europeans have this RH negative factor. So it's fairly rare. And that's why when they say if you've got O negative blood, you have golden blood, because if you are O negative, like myself, you can give blood to literally any other person on the planet.
Yep.
And I'm a universal donor. So, because they discovered, and this is how they discovered the blood types, they were discovering why sometimes when people did a transfusion, people would just die.
Yes.
And it's because they were having an anaphylactic reaction to blood they were allergic to. Unfortunately, I can only receive blood from other O negative donors, because I am allergic to every other person on the planet.
Same.
Unless you're O negative,
Close.
I'm allergic to you.
My youngest son, he's O negative as well. So,
Now, if you happen to be AB positive, you can take anybody's blood,
yes, you're universal recipient.
or a vampire. I don't know which.
One or the other.
I mean, so that
One
being
or
said,
the other.
then we start getting into the weirdness. So
The
do we wanna-
weirdness, which is Mark and Pam, because we're both RH negatives.
we
and
are
Jess is the lone wolf that's a positive in this little group.
now.
Be
It's
positive.
interesting.
Yeah,
It's
she's B
interesting.
positive.
Until Europeans started colonizing the rest of the world, there was no RH negative blood in North America, in Asia,
Yep.
in Africa, in South Africa for sure. So they're pretty sure it originated someplace in Europe.
Yeah,
Uh,
more than likely in the Basque region.
where up to 35% of the people in the Basque region, which is right between France and Spain,
Yep.
it's a very isolated region in the mountains. They've even got their own language and everything. 35%, up to 35% of those people have RH negative blood, and they've also got a higher than normal amount of type O blood.
Yes.
And type O blood appears fairly rarely around the world in indigenous populations. South America, lots of type O blood. The
Yep.
entire continent of Australia was mostly type O blood until recent centuries. The Celtic regions, which were fairly isolated, Basque region, type O blood. So they're in concentrations around isolated areas. So there may be some connection with type O and RH negative blood. I'm not sure. And interestingly, Basque has a bunch of weird stuff going on there. Their language is fairly unique, except they share a bunch of words, not all of them, a bunch of words with the Ainu people in Japan, the Aborigines of Japan. So that's fairly strange. So
That is
isolationism,
strange.
at some point they weren't isolated, or they wouldn't share so many words. And that gets back into the Atlantis talk, and we're just going to avoid that for right now.
Oh, come on, Mark.
But we apparently have lost Jess.
She'll be back.
She'll be back. So there is a lot of chatter on the internet, lots of strange theories about RH negative blood being of alien origin.
Yeah, a little too much chatter about it, I think. I think it's interesting, and I think there's obviously it came from somewhere. Is it a mutation? Who knows? That seems to be the scientific theory that it's a mutation.
The prevalent theory is that it was a mutation about 30 to 40,000 years ago.
Yes. Yep.
But there's also the theory that it is the primordial blood type that originated everything because it is universal. If you are type O, you can give to anybody unless you're type O positive, and then you can't give to negative people. But 85% of the population of Europe or 92% of the population of the rest of the world can take just regular type O blood. Type O negative, anybody can have.
And the probably the most interesting part about the RH negative factor is what does it mean? Honestly, why is it such a big deal? Well, the big deal of it is if you have an RH negative mother and you have an RH positive father, there is a chance that the baby could be RH positive. And if the baby's RH positive, it's a very high likelihood that there's going to be complications that can result in the death of the fetus.
Yeah, and there's actually a fairly low possibility of it being RH negative because the positive is actually a dominant trait.
It is. That's correct. I know so I'm A negative, and with my oldest son, his father was A positive, and I didn't know anything about issues like this, And when they tested my blood and they found out I was negative, I had to take a ROGAM shot, is what it was called, and then I had to carry a card throughout my pregnancy. And Mark, if you'll pull that up, let me hit it, and I'll find that real quick.
She'll find it here in a second, folks.
Did I
She's
get to
sorting
it?
through her screens. It's not showing yet.
Okay.
It's still on human blood types.
Oh, here we go. There it is.
There you go.
That's not my particular card. I do have it somewhere. I'm just not sure where it's at because it's like 35 years old. So who knows where it ended up. But this is the exact card that I carried, but mine just said A negative on it instead of B. But it's kind of strange. I didn't think twice about it, back then. But I was telling these guys backstage, it's kind of freaky to look at it now. It's got the big I am RH negative on it.
Yeah.
But that was a big problem if you because you didn't know what the blood type of the child was going to be until they were born. And there was a chance if they are positive and the blood would cross the placenta or get into the mother's bloodstream somehow, then you build antibodies against it. And so it's not so much the first child that's in danger, it's the potential second child. That's where the problems would arise, because with those antibodies built against the positive blood, if my second child would have been positive and I didn't have the ROGAM shots that kind of nailed all of that, it's highly likely that he would not have been born. I would not have been able to carry him to full term. But luckily he was negative. He's O negative. So I had to take the first ROGAM shot. And like with my oldest son, I had to take the first ROGAM shot. And then after he was born, within 72 hours, I had to take the second dose. And with my youngest son, I had to take the first dose. And then afterwards, I didn't have to take another since he was negative. So there wasn't a chance of issues. But that's the big thing. And that's the big question. If we're all the same species, if there's no issues, then why are we basically allergic?
Yeah, it's like dogs.
Why are we allergic to other humans?
They can make babies with any other dog. There's no difference. Every other primate on the planet is RH positive. Only humans have RH negative blood at all.
Yes.
So that's where we get the really strange theories. It's aliens or the bloodline of the gods. The gods came and the Anunnaki procreated with humans.
Mm-hmm.
The only strange thing about that is that region of the world where the Anunnaki supposedly were, that's not, they didn't have RH negative blood until after the Europeans. So I've got to discount that. But what is really strange is it is a royal blood type.
It is, yeah.
Most royal families in Europe, most members of most royal families in Europe are RH negative, and they have a very high possibility of being O negative.
At least as far back as we can tell,
As
because before the 30s, they would have to, dig them up and check their DNA and their blood types. But yeah, at least
right,
since 37. And there's a high, what did I tell you? Let me count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 presidents since Eisenhower
yeah,
are,
there's
are negative, RH
20
negative.
altogether that they know about, that they were
Yeah,
able to
to
find
find out.
genetic evidence to test. The interesting thing about the royals, though, is because they kept very meticulous records of their interbreeding with one another, and all
Yeah.
of the royal families of Europe are related because they intermarried
Yep.
uh, to excess. So if so
A
many
little too
are,
much.
because both type O and Rh negative factors are recessive genes, the fact that they have such a high concentration of them means that most likely their ancestors did as well. So
Yeah.
a lot can be inferred from that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Prince Charles, well, he's King Charles now, and Queen Elizabeth, his mother, they're both definitely O negatives. Um, Pharaoh Ramses II, he's B negative. We do know that. So that goes clear back into Egypt. Some of the monarchs were as well.
right. So, and that's interesting. And there's, uh,
Dan Aykroyd.
it's interesting. There is an unusually high percentage of world leaders,
Mhm.
entertainers, famous people all over the world in all kinds of walks of life. An unusually high percentage of these people are Rh negative.
They
So,
are.
and this is where we get into some things that might have some reality. And I'm not going to discount the alien thing. I just don't think it's likely. Um, Rh negative people, uh, according to non empirical evidence, anecdotal evidence, tend to be more creative. Um, they tend to, and this is actually recorded, tend to have a higher rate of having blue or green eyes or hazel.
Yep.
Um,
Which
they
you and I
have,
both have, Hazel.
yes, they tend to have uh, and again, this is anecdotal, tend to have a higher intelligence. And
I don't know about
also,
that. I beg to differ in my case.
they tend to also, they also tend to have a higher chance of having a higher education standard. But then again, when you get to seeing all these rich people who have a higher incidence of Rh negative, that could, the monetary part of it could be something to do
That's
with that.
probably what that is,
But
honestly, because they have a better.
why do these famous people all have, I mean, such a higher concentration of Rh negative blood? Are they more successful in life? I'm not, but others are. There's members of my family who are quite wealthy. Um, but fortunately, I came from the good-looking side, not the rich side. Just saying, which
You
says a lot about my. No, no.
we're talking about the positives of it. There's negatives as well because RH negative blood, it's more rare, but it generally means that you have more allergies. And I am
More
the one
autoimmune. More
epiphany of that
autoimmune.
more autoimmune diseases. If you get the wrong blood, you can die, which easily.
But we're
Um,
more
so
resistant
we're
to
allergic to other humans,
viruses.
basically.
We're more resistant to viruses. Uh, I haven't seen any hard numbers on it, but there's anecdotal evidence right now that says you're more likely to survive COVID if you caught it if you were Rh negative. It's not a huge percentage higher,
Yeah.
but again, I haven't seen any hard numbers on it. It's just anecdotal evidence
I
right
have
now, but I'd like to see some studies on it.
I ran across a 2020 study that found that Rh negative was almost twice as common in autoimmune diseases groups as in the U.S. population.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
that is definitely, that's a
it,
big
it
one.
is it is a anti. I just had a brain fart. Uh, it's an antibody.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
Which makes sense.
so that does make sense. But if we're allergic to all the other people, then you know, hey, that makes sense with you too. You're allergic to your ex-husband.
I am definitely allergic to him.
Yeah.
110%. Um,
Uh, there's some really interesting theories about there. Like I said, the alien stuff. Oh, they came from another dimension. Well, they were the descendants of the gods or the fairies. You've probably
yeah.
got some good information on that.
Actually, you know what's really interesting, and I didn't know this for the longest time. In fact, we were already as a group, I think it was like 2014, 2013, maybe, when my dad, before he passed, we were talking about, I can't remember. Yeah, Enzo
I
too.
think we all do. And Enzo says, "Hey, I think I have that allergy to X's." I think everybody does. I think it's
Oh
I
Yeah.
my
think it's
gosh,
universal.
for sure. Um, Forgot what I was talking about.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
You hadn't figured it out until after we were together as a group.
Thank you. Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I was talking to my dad and I was asking him, can't remember exactly what specific question I asked him, but he had asked if I had looked into when his birthday was and his mom and dad's birthdays and stuff. And I was like, I know you're all around the same time, which my dad and his dad are both born May 1st. And then his mom was born April 26th. And he's like, you know, when is that? And I was like, well, it's May Day, that's all I knew. And he's like, well, look into it. There's something that goes along with it, but I can't remember the specifics, but it means something to our family. And I was like, okay. So I look into it, and if you were born, the saying is, if you were born on May Day, you could see the Fae. And I always thought that was pretty cool because I am a descendant of the McLeods in Scotland. And so I kind of dug into that a little bit, and they're the ones that actually have the fairy flag in their castle in Dunvegan. Um, and they are the clan that have always claimed that one of the ancestors had married a fae a fae woman and had a child with them, and that's where the descendants ran through. And that there's some descendants that apparently have carried on a bit of extrasensory ability. And Dad was like, "That's." When I was like, "Is this what you're talking about?" And he was like, "Yeah, that's actually that is what I was talking about." And so to turn around and find out that the RH negative factor goes along with that, and that's one of the things is that there's a tie-in with the Fae there. I thought that was pretty cool that there's two little combining things.
Well, let me throw this one out for you. Those same empirical studies, or not empirical studies, anecdotal studies we were talking about, say that uh, people with RH negative blood are more sensitive to their environment and more likely to have psychic abilities.
Mhm.
So that would go right along with uh, the Fae.
It kind of
Somewhat.
does. And these two know from investigating with me. I have clairaudience, which means I can hear, clear hearing is what it is. And I occasionally will hear things that they don't, but when we play it back on recording, on um,
Yeah,
voice recorder,
we
it,
have evidence.
it will have been caught. And we have what, at least three,
3
I,
or 4
I
that
could,
I know of. Yes.
yeah, that we have evidence of that on, which is pretty cool. And we have one just recent,
Yeah.
actually, within the last few months. That was pretty cool.
That's what they say about and it goes back to the fairy thing, the elven blood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From the outskirts of the what did they call it? The lost tribes of the Celtic.
Yeah. Yep.
Well,
12th
Yeah.
additional mound.
and the Celtic region was isolated for a long time and has a slightly higher concentration of both type O and type negative blood.
Hmm.
And there's a correlation between the Basque people and the Celtic people with the amount of RH factors, and it's a bunch of different things that go along with that. Um, and I always thought it was interesting because I did Ancestry DNA a few years ago, and it popped up that, obviously I'm mostly Scottish, Irish, English, and Welsh, but then I also have Jewish. And we're like, where did Jewish pop in on all of that, And come to find out, there is a connection that there was a band that moved into the Celtic region, and that's probably where that's coming from, and that's probably where the Basque came from, because uh, the I can't remember the there was a Jewish group. I can't remember which name it was. Um, but that's the ones that are in the Celtic region, and that's what mine pops up as is 1%. So there's not a lot there in that, but there is a connection there somewhere. It's kind of cool.
That is
Yeah,
cool.
I thought it was kind of neat. I'm weird for a reason.
I found the whole
Yay.
study of doing the research for this interesting. Most of the information you're going to find on the internet is going to be just your meat and potatoes medical information.
Yeah,
You get on Reddit, you get
you're
on
one end or the other. You're either specifically scientific or you are lizard people. One or the other.
and then that's another one. They're talking about how the negative RH factor is similar to amphibians and lizards.
And that's hilarious because they talk about the fact that there's a higher percentage of RH negatives that can keep one eye forward and cross the other one, and I can totally do that.
I cannot, but
Lizard people, I can. You want to see? I'll show you guys. Are you ready?
Ew. Nice.
Pamela's special talent today.
Right? Yeah. I'm showing them off, and and there's a higher percentage that can curl their tongue, which I can do that.
I can do that.
See? Yay. And you're also Scottish.
Yes.
And Irish.
Scott Irish, yes. Very high percentage, actually. More than what I assumed.
Yay. Yeah, I'm like,
yeah.
I'm almost 50%. It's like 49 point something Scott Irish, 35 Blackfoot Indian, and then a smattering of there's some Scandinavian in there.
Yep.
A little Welsh. Oddly enough, I thought it was really weird. It's strange how you take DNA from different parts of your ancestors. My mother's side of the family is heavily German. Their last name is Falser, but it was Falzer before they moved. It's actually a royal line in Germany. We have a family castle there. I don't have one lick of German. Not one iota. So it's strange. But
again, Europe, on all the families interbreeding, all the royal families, if you're in a noble line, that could explain part of that.
Yeah. Well, I actually have two noble lines. So I have a German line, an old line, and I also am royal through the Scots side. I'm through the Mary Queen of Scots line.
Ooh.
Nice.
Yeah, like the old line. My family was McGregor. Not the good McGregors either, the ones that got kicked out of Scotland. We were the bad ones. Sorry.
I have not had a DNA study done because I just can't get over the fact that once you do that, they own your DNA. They can do whatever they want with it. So I've
done
not to do that
because I'm Blackfoot Indian. And here within the last 20 years or so, they've been really researching that lineage because they've traced it back to one gentleman. He's still alive up at the Montana border, Canada area where the Blackfeet Indian originate from, or from the time that they've based it back. He owns the oldest set of DNA chain they've ever found, the one that they've traced back the furthest. And I found it really interesting. It was one of the reasons why I wanted to do the DNA test. Um, I'm actually a participating member in that study.
That's
Nice.
It's horribly interesting. They come back like every 2 weeks. I have new information on it. They've traced this line of Blackfoot Indian, not from over the land bridge like they've traced every other tribe from. Our tribe somehow were in the Polynesian islands before they were the Polynesians were there. Like we were there before they were. And then this group literally set sail and landed at the bottom of South America and moved their way all the way up to where they reside now, picking up little bits of this and that along the way. So if I look at my like full write up, I have like 1% Yucatan and 1% this, and you can watch it move up as different people married into the tribe.
That's cool.
Until it ended up there. So the interesting thing is they're still tracing. They're trying to figure out where they came from before the Polynesian islands. Like where did they come from before then? Where did they come that way and over and then down and up? And why did they take that way? I just think it's super interesting.
It's very interesting.
Now, see, this is interesting.
Yeah.
How
Jesse
if they could
Appleseed.
estimate how far those links go, we know 13,000 years ago the sea level was much lower.
Yes.
14,000 years ago. So there were entire continent-sized areas that were above sea level that are now below sea level. So there wasn't just one lost continent. You know, everybody talks about Atlantis, and I don't think Atlantis was necessarily a lost continent, but there is several continental-sized areas that were once above sea level. So the odds are they got to the Polynesian islands on foot because that area was all above sea level 13,000 years ago or so. So they probably walked from Asia.
They could have walked, or they could have even, I mean, it would have been more like a river, or, you know, not deep like an ocean.
Or a small boat,
small boat. Yeah. Absolutely.
And that also connects, you know, like the Ainu people in the Basque. If the oceans were much smaller, then sea trade could have gotten pretty much near everywhere. So
I just think it's super interesting that they were like, screw you guys, we're going this way.
We're out. We're doing our own thing.
Peace out, people.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. They were like, you guys are lame. We're going to go the other way.
We're the happy.
I did the DNA test because I am fascinated by genealogy, and I'm really glad I did, because it popped some things up. It confirmed a lot of things, but it also made me question some more things and learned a lot more about, you know, like the whole Jewish aspect. And there is, you know, Norse pops up in my line as well, so Scandinavian, and which makes sense because when you get up into the Isle of Lewis, and you know that's one of the furthest northwestern portions of Scotland, that was mostly a Scandinavian settlement there for a while. So
I probably should break down and do it myself, because according to my mother's maiden name, I should have some Scandinavian blood, because Northcut comes from the word North Scot, which was basically where the Norse married into the Scottish people and just became assimilated.
Yep.
So there's at least a drop probably in there.
It's pretty cool.
I found out something very hilarious not too long ago. So besides keeping up with my DNA information that's coming in. I'm also on an emailing list for the research they're doing on the original clans of Scotland, because they're still trying to figure out who went where, because there were times, when they were pushed out of Scotland,
Yes.
names were changed, things like that. And when my line of McGregors were kicked out of Scotland, they had like a little thing. They were like, okay, you don't have to leave, but if you stay, you have to change your last name. You can't be a McGregor anymore, right? So they've been very slowly researching and doing DNA work and trying to figure out where these lines fingered out to and what their names changed to.
Oh, interesting.
Um, yeah, and my husband Mike is also Scottish, and he comes from the McBain or the McBean clan.
Yeah.
And I just found out recently that one of the biggest clans that were McGregors but just changed their names were
Oh
the
no.
McBain McBean.
Is
Tell
there
my husband
a bit of a circle in one of your branches there? That's okay. That's a
was,
long time ago.
it is, but I was just like, hey cuz, what's up? Yeah, he was just like, please don't say that ever again.
He doesn't think it's very funny, does he?
Well,
Yeah.
in
That's
in
hilarious.
most countries, it's acceptable to marry your first cousin. So
Yeah. Doesn't make it right, but I just thought it was funny. I called him cuz for a day. It was horribly off-putting for him and super fun for me. So, yeah.
you're at least a couple thousand times removed. So
Yeah.
So it's okay.
it's okay.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Everybody's related at some point in the genetic tree someplace.
Yes. Mhm.
They are,
So.
for sure.
Because again, 13,000 years ago, the population of the world went down to just 10,000 individuals. They assume.
Yeah,
So, it got a little pretty dicey there for the human race.
it did. It did.
So,
And there was, I mean, if you go back and use the Bible as a historical reference, there's a lot of things in there that make sense if you realize that there were not just Adam and Eve, on the earth. There was other, like when their son, is it Cain, that leaves to go to the land of Nod to find a wife? Well, who was that? Who was the wife from? What tribe was she from? Because it obviously wasn't his, or they would have been in the same place at the same time. And there's parts that are missing, and I know in a
there's parts
couple,
that's been removed on purpose.
absolutely, there's a couple of spots in Genesis. And not only Genesis, but in like Joshua and Second Samuel, that talks about the book of Jasher. That it'll say something, and behold, as it is written in the book of Jasher, and that's not part of the Bible that I grew up with.
Right.
And in the Baptist church, it wasn't in there for sure. Um, but there is a book of Jasher, and you can read it. And there's portions of it that were excluded from the current Bible that we have now.
Yeah.
And
The book of Enoch.
yes, the book of Enoch.
And it's referenced several times in the current Bible.
It is, for sure.
So, and you can go online and get a PDF of that.
Yes, you can, and you can do the same with the book of Jasher. So,
Yeah.
and I have not read that one, and I want to, because in doing some research for this, I ran across that. Had I seen it in the Bible? Yeah. Has it been a while since I actually sat down and read the Bible? It's been a day.
And that may be where people have gotten the idea that RH negative blood has something to do with aliens or the Anunnaki, because there are several things in the book of Enoch that look like they might be referencing space flight or a space station.
Very true.
So,
yes.
And that could be just referencing a prior civilization too. I don't know.
Maybe so.
That's the thing, is nobody really knows. And even if they did know, nobody knows anymore.
Yeah, right.
So,
that's a huge part right there. It doesn't, and we talk about this a lot. It only takes a generation or two at the most, and Then
Then
information's
it's just
gone.
legends.
Absolutely, it can be completely
Uh,
wiped out.
the human species has existed for, I forget how long, several 100,000 years,
Yes.
as Homo sapiens. Uh, Not even long enough to really make a big print in the fossil record.
Hmm.
But we've only been keeping records for the last 6 to 9,000 years, and so 99% of human history is forgotten, lost.
And if you look at as us as humans, and then you look at the age of the Earth itself, I think if uh, what I read was if you likened the length of the life of the Earth as a 24-hour clock, and we came on as humans at 12:59 p.m. So at that very last minute is just as long as we've been on the
Right,
entire 24-hour cycle.
right. And see, most people don't realize even dinosaurs, we don't know everything that ever existed.
No.
And there is remarkably few specimens, especially complete specimens, of any one dinosaur ever found. And they existed for uh, hundreds of millions of years.
Yes,
So we haven't even had time to really saturate the fossil record.
we have
So
not. And there's a lot of proof that has been uncovered, and a lot of it that's been covered up as well, that we've talked about before, um, where it looks like that there were other civilizations of humans, or maybe not exactly as we are, but that populated the earth at different points.
well, yeah, and we know that the Great Flood actually happened. That's the thing.
Hmm.
Uh, those of you who are Christian and those of you who are not, read the accounts of the Great Flood. Read the Epic of Gilgamesh if you can't stand to touch a Bible, because it's the same thing. The Great Flood actually existed. We have geological proof that this happened somewhere between 12 and 14,000 years ago or so. So, and the oceans came up about 400 feet
Hmm.
in a matter of weeks.
And
So
from what
just
it looks
think,
like, I mean, looks like Noah was a real dude. There's the book of Noah that's in the book of Enoch, at least a fragment of it that's in there. But what's really cool about him being in there is in the book of Enoch, he talks about how different Noah was. He was a white man with a reddish tint, and his hair was white. Um, but some people suggest that maybe the writer of that line may have been trying to refer to blonde hair. So there's a potential there that Noah was blonde haired, and that was unheard of at that time.
right?
You know, so and it can appear white in sunlight, and if you don't have a reference for blonde hair in
It can
your
bleach.
yeah,
Blonde hair bleaches extremely well in sunlight. So
if your point of reference doesn't ever have you running across blonde hair before, what's the closest thing? It's going to be white. It's going to be a
a lot of stuff gets lost over the years.
Mhm.
And you're right. The Bible is a historical document. No matter what you believe, there is a lot of facts in there that can be proven. There's a lot of stuff that can't, but
Mhm.
and you just have to take on faith. But there are a lot of historical facts in there that you can track through history, and the flood is one of them. So, and with the population of the human population dropping, and I want to say it was 10,000. It might have been as many as 100,000. I can't remember. I don't have that document in front of me. I may have dropped a couple zeros because
I'm not sure what
you know,
what the number was.
read my subtitle there, Swiss cheesehead. It's a thing. Uh, but still, an uncomfortably low number of individuals survived
Mhm.
that apocalypse. It was an apocalypse. Uh, so the fact that RH uh, negative blood survived that is interesting.
It is. And in that fragment of the book of Noah, um, what Enoch says is, "I have begotten a strange son, diverse and unlike from man, and resembling the sons of God of heaven. And his nature is different. He's not like us. His eyes are as the rays of the sun, and his countenance is glorious." So I don't know.
There you
Sounds like
go.
he was definitely striking individual compared to those around him, at least, which really leans back to his parentage. Where did he come from? Obviously there's a new introduction of something, into
And
the.
so I think that's where all these weird theories come from. And there's probably a drop of truth in there someplace. I don't know where it's at. But that's what makes it interesting, is eking that out.
And I can't remember. I was looking to see in my notes here. I know the Neanderthal people were on the earth at some point, and it was more likely before the flood. And they were called the Watchers. And there was a group of people in the Bible called the Watchers, which is more than likely going to be the Neanderthals.
Well, and we also have proof that modern humans and Neanderthals were basically at war for the entire time they shared the earth together.
Mhm.
They there's evidence to show that we kind of hunted them down.
We did, and they died out a long time ago.
Well, except for the parts that we intermarried with, and there is just that tiniest bit left in our
Yeah,
DNA.
there's just a drop in there. There's not much.
But there's a drop of. This is interesting. This is a little bit off topic. I won't, but it's kind of on top because we're talking about genealogy.
Mhm.
Every type of DNA for every type of human that we've actually been able to extract DNA from has been found in human DNA. So, we're kind of the horn dogs of the primate species. Just like a Chihuahua and a Great Dane can have puppies if they can figure out the logistics. We managed to make lots of strange bedfellows.
Oh my goodness. Labradoodles and all kinds of funky things. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we are. We're the mutt of the
I would agree with that.
Of the Homo. I just lost the word.
Homo erectus.
Of the hominoids.
Or Homo sapiens.
Of the hominoids, we're the mutt of the hominoids.
Gotcha.
We just, I like this one. I'm just going to bring it home. And guess what? Everything worked. Oops.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Guess we have to keep them.
Ooh.
Look, Mom, I brought home a Neanderthal.
And that's terrible. So,
that is terrible.
Is there a chance that, RH negatives, are they hybrids?
They could be hybrids.
Could be.
But are they hybrids with aliens or the gods, or are they hybrids with something like one of the other hominids that died out? That's actually probably more likely than being aliens.
There's a little bit of evidence that kind of points towards the giants.
Yes.
Right.
Nephilim.
Right.
So, the RH negative blood is very high in strands of what they think are people that are left over from the Maya and the Inca and all of those down there. And if you've all watched our series that we had done on the giants and ancient history in America, when we left off, we were tracing those giants and the ancient Nephilim down through. They had been chased out of Upper America and were being chased down into Southern America, where we think they were the gods that were kind of residing over these small pockets of native Southern Americans. And most of these pockets just suddenly left or moved out of the areas. But they think that they know that these people, that the little bit that are left here and there, there's these little pockets of the RH negatives. And they believe it's left over from those lines coming down from those giants that supposedly ruled.
It could be.
So another interesting theory.
Yeah.
That is an interesting theory.
There's a few of them out there.
Mm-hmm.
It is. And like I said, I don't know the answers. I don't know anybody who does know the answers. Modern science say they know the answers, but we all know how much we need to trust science, if you just trust science blindly, then you're not actually trusting science. Science was made to be questioned. And that's why I like talking about a lot of this fringe stuff. Some of it I believe in, some of it I'm skeptical of. Uh, but you should question everything. I mean, you might not like the answers, but you should always question everything. Because
Absolutely.
if you don't discover anything.
Yeah.
So
There's
what?
another theory that that RH negatives are through the bloodline of Jesus himself, which is an interesting one. Because there's the theory out there that Jesus had married Mary Magdalene and that they had children together. And, there's generations of stories in France. And I know we've got Sylvain in the chat. He can tell us if we're full of poop or not. That Mary Magdalene had moved there after Jesus was crucified. And so all over southern France, she's remembered in the cathedrals, and there's like a special feast day for Mary Magdalene on July 22nd of each year. And one version of that story claims that Mary Magdalene was traveling under the protection of her brother Lazarus and Joseph of Arimathea, and that she brought the Holy Grail to France, to the coast of France. So what's interesting about that, there's always, you've got the search for the Holy Grail, and you've got the Knights Templar that are supposed to be protecting the Grail or looking for the Grail, and all these different things. But the Grail has never been found. But the only thing that seems to be agreed upon is that it is a vessel. It's a sacred vessel, because it once contained the blood of Jesus. Well, yeah, what else would be more likely something that would, a sacred vessel that would contain the blood of Jesus? A child,
No, that's an interesting point, actually.
So if they say that Mary Magdalene brought the Holy Grail to France, well, if she could have easily, because at one point she would have been the vessel herself when she carried a child. But I think the story is that they had 3 children together. There was I have to look. I know I have their names somewhere.
That's buried someplace in the Apocrypha, isn't it?
It is. Yes, it is. So, okay, here's the legend that says Mary Magdalene brought the blood royal to the coast of France in 42 AD. One does not carry the blood royal in an alabaster ointment jar with a lid. The blood of kings is carried in the veins of children. In the revised interpretation of the medieval legend, the vessel that once contained this sangral was not an artifact, but rather a woman, Mary Magdalene herself, the mother of a royal offspring of the Davidic bloodline.
And what if they ended up in the Basque region, and that's why there's such a high concentration of?
Exactly.
They could have a lot of people say that they carried that bloodline to keep it going through the Cathars and the Rosicrucians, and then it traveled overseas. And some people debate whether it came into the New World, if it came into America, and that
it definitely came into Ireland and Scotland for sure.
Yeah,
like I said,
at least a portion of it did.
It's very Dan Brownish.
It is, isn't it?
Of Europeans have O negative or have type negative blood, and 35% up to 35% in Basque, and there's another high concentration. I can't remember what mountainous region it's in, but it's
Pyrenees.
It's not, the Pyrenees. It's not as high as 30%, but it's higher than 15.
Yeah.
So
Sylvain's in the chat, and he said, "I'll have to check, but I think you're right on the stories." Now, there's the Pesher story of Jesus, where he's married to Mary Magdalene, and they had the 3 children. That's the one that I was talking about earlier. The first child that they had was a daughter named Tamar, and that she was born in Israel. And the other 2 children were born in France, and their names are Joseph and Josephus. And so this kind of, I saved some of these just because I thought they were interesting. So you've got the book of John in chapter 1, verse 14, and it says, "And the word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, and the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. And then John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So who was the Word of God that was made into flesh? Well, that was Jesus, right? He was the Word. So if you use the Pesher code, then we should interpret the lines that talk about the Word of God increased you can interpret it as Jesus had a child or children. So I don't know. I thought it was got a pretty good argument for some of that, that
I won't say one way or another. I know how the church feels about it, but then again, I also know about all the books that they've thrown out because they didn't
Exactly.
think they were pertinent. And
Especially when you use
how do you account
word.
for something that you don't have information on?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
The
I
fact
can't say
that
one way or the
in the
other.
Bible Jesus jumps from being this boy
Yeah, from
and
age
then
of 12 up to
suddenly
30.
and like this whole section's missing and we won't even go into Nicaea and all that bull honky.
Yep.
Yeah.
So not even saying, I'm not religious, but I will say I grew up in the church. My family was very religious.
Same, yeah.
I even taught Sunday school for many years. So whether I believe it or not, I know the history of it.
That's how I am. Exactly.
And there's a huge hunk missing out of there. And I will say, like, men and women have had their way with with the Bible and with the different books and stuff got chucked out when it wasn't needed.
Yeah.
Or when it wasn't, suitable for what
when it
their
didn't
plans
align
were.
with what the king needed it to align with.
Yeah. Things got chucked and moved and rewrote and, reinterpreted. Wouldn't it be wonderful to know what that whole intact thing would be now?
That would be so cool.
It would be about 6 foot tall, probably.
But super interesting.
Honestly, I mean, and the Catholic Church has a lot of that information, but I mean, we'll never see it.
So you know what's really cool about all this? You've got the famous psychic Edgar Cayce. He was known as the sleeping psychic. He channeled information that told about like the Gnostic Christian religion years before the Gnostic scrolls were even found. And he even said that the Gnostics taught more in line with what Jesus had taught. So, you look at, you're supposed to love your neighbor, you're supposed to do all these things, but there's a lot of people that really don't follow those things,
No,
unfortunately.
human nature is well, I am a professing Christian. I will admit that. But I also understand human nature. And so did one of the major shapers of the Reformed theology, Calvin.
Yeah, Calvinism.
And he said men are basically lost, evil by their very nature. So I believe he's right. I don't feel evil, but I have evil thoughts on occasion, daily, and as does everybody else. Everybody's got good and evil in them. So he was right. I mean, admit it to yourself. As good as you try to be, as good as anybody tries to be, nobody is perfect. And
I don't try to be perfect because I know I'm not.
Right.
What I thought was really cool and where I was kind of going with that was, the Gnostics teaching more in line with the way Jesus had taught. All the quotes, they certainly show the terminology that was used when it came to speaking about Jesus and his life would almost certainly be associated with that of a wife when it came to Mary Magdalene. And I thought that was pretty interesting as well. It's only most evil.
So we've got that, and we've got the alien theories, and I've heard the transdimensional theories where somebody came through from another dimension and their blood was different. The theories of the Anunnaki being the source of the RH negative blood. I recently came across one, like I said, that thought perhaps the RH, that type O negative was the primordial bloodline, since it's universal. Those persons are not rejected by anybody. I don't know about that. It's hard to tell. You can't go back in time and start testing people, really. I mean, you can go back so far with DNA and whatnot, but
Well, and something else that you need to keep in mind when you're thinking about that, like, there's a reason why they don't use blood types to determine parentage, because you can't.
yeah,
Because
because they can
I
have an
know
odd one pop up from.
absolutely, my father was A positive, my mother is a B positive, and I'm A negative. How does that happen? Because I know my
Right.
dad's really my dad. That's when you kind of get into more of the science of it, where you've got alleles. So you've got a couple of different types of groups. It's a, I can't remember what's even called, but so like if my dad's A positive, if he was, you're going to have alleles. Everybody has two alleles, and you can either be positive positive or positive negative. So my dad had to be a positive negative, as did my mom. She could be AB positive, but she had to be a positive B negative or A negative B positive, one way or the other. But dad had to be A positive negative, where it really truly counted for them to come down, because both of them would have to pass one allele apiece on to me, so that each pet passed on uh, a negative, and that's how I ended up negative.
Yeah, it's complicated,
It is.
and you could have
That's one reason
a
I lost it.
throwback that goes back, 4 or 5 generations. I mean, you
Yes.
have that. I mean, I one of my kids could have easily been redheaded. I've got redheads back in my family, so
Yeah, for sure. And mine, my hair comes out of a bottle now, but it's usually, if it was back to its original color, it'd be really dark brown. But in the sun, it had red highlights. Which,
no,
yeah,
it's crazy. And like I said, the conspiracy theories about it, a lot of them are just that, but they're interesting to look at because even scientists cannot tell you where it came from. They've got guesses, and they really can't back them up with anything. They really don't have much more to go on than we do when we're speculating. They
no,
do have some more, but if they wanted to hide something, it'd be fairly easy because they've admitted they don't really know how it came to be. They have suspicions, and I have my suspicions. Um, if I was going to be after our conversation tonight, if I had to say, I say it would be more likely they came from um, one of the other hominids that we co-opted in the past.
it's probably going to be, yeah, it's going to come down to one of the other three races that was on the earth at the time of Adam and Eve, and all of that. It's going to be which you're going to run into the fallen angels, you know, which are the Nephilim. You got the Watchers, which were the Neanderthals, and I cannot for the life of me remember the other, unless it's just humans itself. Might have been. Um, so, it's going to be a combination between those two. Is probably where it's going to come in to
Well,
play, where there was a mutation way 30, 40 million years ago, probably, or 30, 40,000 years ago. I mean,
well, they're saying 30, 40,000 years ago when it first popped up. Well, at
mhm.
that time, there were still Neanderthals. There may have been several of and it may have been a throwback to one of the other hominids that were extinct at that time
Could have been.
because we've got little bits of their DNA scattered in ours. Everyone that they've gotten DNA information from, they've found smatterings of it in our DNA. So that could be actually that's most likely where it came from. But these other theories, they're fun to think about, and
They
like
are.
they can't prove anything. One of those theories could be right.
And
That's what makes this fun.
what's really cool too is bacteria will change your DNA. Viruses will change your DNA. Not a lot, but a little bit. And I mean, there's ancient viruses that are floating around in our DNA that has made those small changes. It could be something as easy as that, or I say easy, as simple as that. Um, but who knows? Because we don't 100% know how all of that works. They're getting there, but we don't
Yeah.
know it all yet, obviously.
If we don't crash our society before they completely decode our genetic makeup, then yeah, we may never know.
Mhm.
And civilizations rise and fall all the time.
They do.
So our civilization is going to fall at some point, and all this information will be lost. And then 10,000 years from now, or 20,000 years ago, three friends are going to be on whatever passes for a computer then, and talking
Yeah.
about, oh my gosh, did our ancestors have computers? Did they fly to the moon? We found strange things on the moon. Where did those come from?
Did they talk about, all these weird things? Did they have podcasts?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we don't know.
Mm.
Did they leave behind these crystal spheres that we get all this? Are they full of information like our computer chips? I don't know.
Which
The
is
crystal
really cool.
skulls.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
I know,
I
right?
know. That's another thing I love.
So,
That's
I
another
mean,
thing I love.
that's the thing I love about doing this show is we get to sit here and speculate. We
Yes.
look at these strange theories, and like I said, this one is super interesting.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what I believe about these, but because there's no way to prove any of it.
There isn't, but that's the fun part. I mean, we're not trying to dig up the truth on it. We're just talking about it
We're
and having
starting a
conversation.
conversation so people can look at it because it is really super interesting.
It is. It's one of
Um,
those fascinating things that
and like I said, I'm a
rattle to my head.
paranormal guy. I believe in UFOs exist. I don't know where they come from. I've got some ideas.
Mhm.
So alien DNA, yeah, it could happen. They could be kidnapping us and modify. There's that theory that we're genetically modified by aliens or some other creature. That's a big one, actually, and we've kind of skipped it. Um, but honestly,
Yeah.
if I had to put money on something, if you had some magic device to tell you, okay, you're right or you're wrong or whatever, if I had if I were to put money on it, I would say that it's probably a throwback to some other hominid that we incorporated into our DNA,
Mhm.
or it
I
could
know
have been a hominid that slipped over from
geneticists.
another universe. I don't know.
I know that geneticists they talk about maybe our blood type being a mutation, and they describe it as being like a gene deletion, which it's called like a crossing over effect, where the copy of the RHD gene didn't get copied, and so when this strand was being reproduced in descendants, it got copied and carried over, missing that RHD gene.
Just like a copy of a copy of a copy on a photocopier just gets worse
Yes,
and worse.
it gets a little bit fuzzier
I mean, and
every
that's
time.
also highly likely. I don't know, but it is fun to research, and it is fun to sit here and chat about.
Hmm.
That being
You know what
said,
it could be?
what's that?
I'm pretty sure that it's just the coding for our characters.
Oh, because we live in a simulation.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Could be. Look how
I
many
mean
times there's a little glitch, in a
it's a
computer
computer
program.
error.
Hmm.
It's because of the Large Hadron Collider.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Let's blame it
You
on
could be
that.
right, which is
I,
kind of scary because, yeah, that could
yeah,
very
Well,
well be.
it may not be a glitch in your coding. Maybe it is just your coding. Maybe you're from a different level than the other ones.
Hmm.
And maybe you can't you're allergic to some specific ones because they're from a level you're not supposed to be on.
Maybe so.
maybe we're the higher level.
Ooh.
Dun dun
Hey,
dun.
I didn't mean it like that. You shoved me down there. Rude.
It's an old patch. Enzo says it's an old.
Oh, you're probably right. That's so sad. You're
We're
probably
the
that
RH negative is
rings
a
true more than
software
anything.
patch.
Yeah.
Rings true more
Still
than
floating around
anything.
out there.
Oh my
Computer
gosh.
virus.
Trying to look to see if I missed anything I wanted to bring up.
All right. If you don't
Oh,
have anything else, I think we're about done.
I do have one thing, which is
All right.
a little disturbing, and this goes back. This harkens back to the card that I showed. How it kind of is a little skeevy that you had to carry this card saying I am an RH negative female kind of thing. Because if you look at when the RH factor was found, 1937, okay, and a lot of the population that was RH negative had a higher percentage of being Jewish. See where I'm going with this?
Right.
So when did Hitler start killing Jews?
The eugenics programs in the 1920s and 30s.
1939, which is about 2 years after the discovery of the RH negative blood. So is this a coincidence, or did Hitler find out about this blood type and realize it could be used as a marker for a Jewish person?
Could be. Enzo
So
makes a good point. For it to be a mutation mistake, it has some pretty good pros and some not so bad cons.
it does, yeah.
So
He's right.
that lends itself more to engineering.
It does, yeah.
So I don't know, but it's fun to look into. I encourage anybody who has some time. You won't. It's hard to find on the net, but you can find it. There's all kinds of crazy stuff on Reddit, all kinds of crazy stuff on YouTube. Some of it is a little weirder than I can handle, and some of it is compelling.
I have a little bit to go along with the ending of this too, if you want me to throw it out there.
Just throw it out there. That's what we're here for. Let's go out in the weeds. That's what I love.
Right. Well, Jess was talking about, it may have been you too, whoever brought up the Hadron Collider and things like that. So this one quote that I saw from somebody, I thought it was pretty good. I actually found it in a group, and they said the final solution was to use CERN to recreate the Big Bang and destroy the universe as the ultimate FU to God himself and try to become the creators of the new universe. It backfired when we shifted to a parallel universe with CERN, which is why we have the Mandela effect now. Idiots thought they could blame God, and God just changed the channel. I was like, that's awesome.
That is awesome.
Yeah. And he didn't do it with a remote. He said, "You go turn that knob." I remember turning the channel on the TV. Oh, I had to walk 10 feet through shag carpet both ways. It was terrible.
Yeah.
Uphill
both ways. Yeah.
In the snow.
Or sometimes had to stand outside the door and get the relay, turn it a little bit more, turn the out. We'd turn the pole by hand.
Yes.
Those kids would stand outside and turn the pole. Yeah. Yep. Change the channel.
Yeah. But no, I thought that was a pretty good.
That was interesting. So
yeah.
All right, guys. Well, if you guys don't have anything else, I think it's time to wrap it up.
That's all I had.
Sounds good.
All right. Well,
that was a fun one.
I hope everybody enjoyed the show tonight. I enjoyed researching it. I enjoyed talking about it. It's somewhat controversial, but it's also somewhat not controversial. It's just super interesting.
It is.
And it's interesting to speculate about. And no matter what you believe, I hope that you found the show entertaining, if nothing else. So with that being said, good night, everybody. And I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Woohoo. Good night.
Oh,
good night.
Don't forget to check out Pam and Jess.
Oh, yes.
On Border Town Strange.
And Enzo.
And Enzo.
Yeah.
And Mark, most likely.
And Mark, most likely, yes.
Yeah, we're gonna do the second part of Black Eyed Kids. We're gonna get into like the Men in Black connection.
Yeah, it'll be a good one for sure.
It should be creepy and fun.
Mark your calendars now.
Yeah. And test your blood and find out what you are. It's good to know what you are.
Yeah, just in case you have an accident.
Yeah, you have a medical emergency. It's really good to know. So
go find out. Actually, you can probably check your medical records, and if you've had blood tests done, they more than likely have it marked in your records.
Yeah.
What it is.
Yeah, mine's actually on my. Yeah, mine's on my birth certificate. So if you were born, I was born in the 70s, in the state of Kansas. I don't know if it was just Kansas that did it, but check your check even your birth certificate.
I
Mine
don't
was on
think
there.
it's on
so.
mine.
I
I'm
need
pretty
to
sure
check
it's not.
mine. I don't know if it's on
Yeah,
my
I don't
original
think
one.
it is. But yeah.
All right, then. Well, everybody have a good night. Have a good week. And we'll see you next time on The Fringe.
Woohoo. Good night, everybody.
Good night.